Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our morning series, but not the Arsenal news show, because today is just our regular raw reaction show talking about the latest Arsenal fixture, of course, in which Arsenal lost 4-0 to Liverpool on Saturday evening. The reason as to why it's taken me until Monday to do a reaction is because yesterday was my birthday, so there was going to be no show. There was no show yesterday, and I just said I'm going to have the day off. And then this week we get kind of things back to normal. You should get 6 out of 7 days. Saturday will be the only day that you don't get your show, but then we'll have another show a little bit later on Saturday, doing the Newcastle reaction. So you will still get a show every single day. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you aren't already, and drop a like on today's video as well. Thirdly, my throat still isn't 100% better, so apologies for that if I am a little bit grainy or I'm a little bit in need of some water throughout this and need to awkwardly pause. But I want to talk about this game as much as possible. Get some of your thoughts and feelings. There may be a podcast as well to get some thoughts of our regular guests, and I'll be on the Arsenal Lounge a little bit later on this evening as well at 8 o'clock UK time. So make sure that you tune in for that. So there you go. And thank you to everybody in the chat box that's wishing me a belated birthday. Thank you. Appreciate all of the kind messages, and good morning to everybody as well. Hope you're doing good. Hope you are well. And just make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't done so already. So, look, I thought that Arsenal were very, very well beaten on Saturday. It was, to set the scene, I was in a pub in London which contained more Liverpool fans than Arsenal fans. It was embarrassing, to be honest, how many more Liverpool fans there were. Some of them don't think I'd ever been to Liverpool, but that's another thing. But it was just a little bit of a strange game, because leading into it, I genuinely had this confidence. I had more of kind of a confidence about myself as an Arsenal fan for an Arsenal game at Anfield, because we've been battered there. We've been absolutely battered at Anfield over the years. 5-1s, 4-0s, 5-0, whatever. Like, we've been beaten very, very easily in games. Now, I don't think this game played out quite like those ones in the past. In fact, I thought we were kind of in the game for the first 35 to 40 minutes of the match. We were dealing with them. We were weathering the storm, if you will, of a lot of it, and breaking out a few times. And had we been a little bit more clinical, a little bit smarter, had Aubameyang tried to keep on side a bit more, we could have even taken the leads in the game. But we didn't. And eventually a set piece, which has ironically been Arsenal's kind of advantage so far this season, is scoring goals from set pieces, that cost us. And Sadio Mane, who, is just not a very likable player, is he? The amount of times he barges into players and tackles players, leaves his foot, leaves his elbow into challenges, got on the end of that cross, brilliant cross as you'd expect from Trent Alexander-Arnold, and headed past Ramsdale. Question about whether Ramsdale could have done a bit better, maybe. But I think, considering the games that he's played of late, I can contextualize it. And then Arsenal go into the break, obviously just conceding right before half-time, which is always a massive mental hit to a side that's put in a lot of effort to try and keep the game level, keep yourselves in things. And you start the second half and you want to see a reaction. And I don't think we saw a reaction. Even before Nuno Tavares' mistake, I don't think we saw a reaction. I think we saw very much a side that was still a bit shell-shocked and a little bit down, a little bit disappointed from conceding. And then Tavares' mistake, look, you don't do that. You don't play a blind pass in that position. And, of course, I was one of the people that wanted to see Nuno Tavares start. I didn't see any reason as to why you would drop him. And I'm not going to turn around and say that single moment justifies Kieran Tierney starting, because who knows what Tierney would have done. I don't think he would have done that. We don't know how the game would have gone. But I think what was very true is that the immaturity of this side was very much shown in this game. And, we obviously the third and fourth goal are just, the game's gone. at this point. The game has just completely gone. The team is the heads have gone, and I knew that what we would see is people coming out of the woodwork after the game, people bashing Arteta, people that have been, hiding behind their Arteta out Twitter accounts. I knew that we would see them come out the woodwork, and we did. And a lot of people chose to really, twist the knife on Arteta after the game, which you can expect. I still think it's ridiculous. And by the way, this is coming from someone who's still not on the Arteta in train, as it will. I'm still very much on the fence. And as I said, I want to wait till Christmas, see where we are before I kind of, have a position of where I'm really standing. But to see so many people get the knives out for Mikel Arteta after this game, I thought was ridiculous. I thought was ridiculous to see him getting so heavily criticised when he played an 11 that most people wanted to see, was, really strange. Really strange. It was only one switch that I would have made, and that was Ødegaard in from Lacazette at the start, just to give us a little bit more creativity and a little bit more service to Aubameyang. And so there was that. Oh, why is this not turned on? There we go. I was wondering why my laptop's gone dark. It's because we're not charging. Apologies if I cut out in a second for the Wi-Fi kicking in. I just thought it was odd. I thought it was strange. I thought that to really go in on Arteta after that performance lacks a little bit of context, and it lacks a little bit of just context, really. I mean, you look at the previous 10 games and you look at where we are now, and you go, we've progressed in those 10 games. And so to someone to turn around and say that 5-0 result against Man City and the 4-0 result against Liverpool shows that we haven't made any ounce of progress is blind. It's really, really blind. Because I didn't look at that 4-0 game anywhere like I looked at the 5-0 game. In the 5-0 game against Manchester City, what we saw was a team with nothing. What we saw against City was a team that was poorly set up, a team that couldn't defend, with, really kind of average players. In comparison to the quality that City had. Whereas in the Liverpool game, we really did compete for the first 35 to 40 minutes. We were really in that game. Even at 1-0, I was like, okay, look, we've taken a goal. It was a really annoying goal to concede from a set piece. But we're still in this and we can come back. The difference between those two games was you had a game that was poorly managed with some really kind of poor players in, and we were never going to win that. We never had a hope, never had an ounce, a shred of hope of getting anything from City. Against Liverpool, we had a team that was very young. We had a team that was inexperienced, and we had a side that type of game was always going to happen at some stage. And I, for one, I'm pleased to happen against Liverpool of all other teams, because even this Arsenal side, playing to the best of its abilities, will lose against that Liverpool side because they are just that good. The game didn't tell us anything about how we are in comparison to Liverpool, because we know where we are in comparison to Liverpool. We know we aren't as good as them. So losing this game isn't a surprise. And I can contextualize it in comparison to the Manchester City game, because the Manchester City game didn't demonstrate a side that we know aren't anywhere near as good as City. The Manchester City game was an embarrassment. The Manchester City game was an awful, awful performance, an awful tactical decision to pick certain players and to choose players like Kolasinac in certain positions, playing Cedric, playing Ødegaard in a number 8 role next to Xhaka against Manchester City. Like, that for me was such a crucial issue. And I look at the Liverpool game and I go, we've made progress here. We've got a better team selection. He's picked the team that I think most people would have wanted, bar maybe Tierney or Ødegaard. And we were really in it. And it was because of the fact that these kids have been really hit with such a big, big blow after on such a high of those 10 games, that for me was always going to happen. So I'm not surprised we lost. I'm disappointed that we lost, but I'm certainly not going to sit here with my knives out and twist them around Mikel Arteta and say, look, wow, that was always going to happen, in the sense of, yeah, we're not good enough. We're not making any progress. Nothing's changed. A lot's changed. A lot still needs to change, and we need to improve a lot more. And we need to get to a stage where we can go to Anfield and be a little bit better, a lot better than we were today. But I saw a lot of progress. I still see a lot of progress over the last 10 games. And now the biggest question before I come into the chat box, now I'm about to come to the chat box with your comments, so get them ready, is that now the biggest question is how we react. It's how we now turn this around, because these guys have had 10 games of buoyancy, 10 games of momentum, 10 games of confidence and ego and arrogance available to them to carry them into this game, and it has been fully shot to pieces. And now we go into a game against a side that hasn't won a single game this campaign in Newcastle, with the chance to react, the chance to really, get back on the horse, and then go into some really tough fixtures against Everton and Manchester United and West Ham. And, Leeds away from home is not an easy game. We've got some really good opportunities to get back on the horse, to build that momentum back up, to put the Arteta out agenda-holding weirdos back in their box and, move forwards. And that's a really good place to be. But if we aren't capable of doing that, and if we do lose against Newcastle, if we don't react against Newcastle and in the next games, then quite rightly there'll be criticism, because this is the chance to then, push forwards from this point. And if we don't do that, it's going to be a big, big shame. Anyway, let's go into the chat box. Let's see what you guys are saying in there. And yeah, we'll get some of your thoughts. I'm just going to take a brief sip of water because my voice is going already, I can tell. Let's scroll up in the chat. I'm not going to be on for too long because I can already feel my voice is getting a little bit fragile. Let's go to Hasala, who says, what positions do you think we need to improve to compete with the big boys? Striker, centre midfield. I think we really lack some experience blending these young players with some of the just more experienced 27, 28-year-olds like Partey. I thought Partey was quite poor. I thought Aubameyang was quite poor. Lacazette didn't really offer too much. They're in positions in striker and centre forward that aren't really going to impact the game if you haven't got much of the ball. But we lacked a little bit of direction and leadership, and maybe that's the style that we need to bring in to the team. Nick B says, Partey and Lokonga looking bad for transitions forward. Thiago bossed the midfield, and Fabinho is a hugely underrated. I don't think Fabinho is hugely underrated. I think he's a brilliant, brilliant footballer. Thiago had one of his best games in Liverpool shirt, without a shadow of a doubt. He was one of the best players on the pitch, and it was kind of the Thiago that I've not wanted to see, because I want to see Liverpool do well. But he was the Thiago that I knew that we should have gone for as much as we could have done, because he was brilliant. It was just a little Santi Cazorla orchestrating the central midfield is what he was. He was brilliant. And we really lacked that kind of, calmness. We really lacked that edge about our midfield, and we didn't have that in the team. Silo says he ain't fully at fault for the game. He doesn't have in-game management and still doesn't know how to transition and attack. Our metrics for attacking are damning. And that is absolutely true. Our attacking stats, our offensiveness, if that is a word, yes, I suppose it is. How kind of crisp and edgy and inventive and imaginative our forward line is one of the worst it is. It's one of the worst it's been in an Arsenal shirt for a while. Because Arsenal have needed to build up this defence for a long, long time. We've been making individual mistakes, silly errors. But if you can stop the opposition scoring and you only create, less chances than you would previously, you've got a real chance of winning quite a few games. And Arteta's kind of turned that around for Arsenal. He's created a real good foundation for the team, but it's the other end of the pitch that's the problem. And I'm not sure that he's got all the personnel right now that he needs to get the most from this team. I'm not sure that the striker he wants is a finisher. He needs someone that can finish, but he needs someone that's going to be able to get involved with the link-up play. Aubameyang's not that person, and I'm just not sure that he's got the striker right now that he wants for his perfect system. And because of that, I just don't think that we're going to see Arteta's best and most efficient attacking output while he's got the current crop of players. And someone might turn around and say that, well, it's his job. He's got to get the best. But at the end of the day, even managers like Pep Guardiola, even managers like Jurgen Klopp won't necessarily get the best from themselves until they've got the players that they need in certain positions. I think what we've seen is that we've seen Arsenal step up their distribution and their build-up play massively. You look at the introduction of Ramsdale, Tomiyasu, Ben White, Gabriel, even Nuno Tavares, adding to Kieran Tierney, and adding those players has enabled Arteta to be a much better manager for the side from the way that we build up from the back. And that's a credit to him, and obviously a massively more so Edu as well from the recruitment side of things. Until we see kind of the striking department really get the players, or the player more so, that I think Arteta wants in the striking position, we're not going to see the ultimate output. We're seeing some of the best output defensively because he's got the team that he wants. He's got the players that he wants in those positions. And because he's an inexperienced coach, and because he's not a Conte, or because he's not a Guardiola or a Klopp or whatever, he's not necessarily going to be able to get the most from players that he didn't necessarily sign and that aren't his at the beginning. And that's a criticism that's fair. And you can turn around and say, well, we should have had a manager that could get the best from all the players. And, you know, there's a solid argument there. But however, we've got him. And so for the moment, I can really kind of contextualize and explain the reasons as to why the attacking output isn't necessarily working, because you've got players there that aren't his. And at the moment, we've got an entire front four that wasn't signed by him. But it doesn't excuse it entirely, and he does need to make sure that he's improving. Furban dropping in. I don't think I've seen you in the chat since we last lost, ironically. But it's not about excuses. It's about the reasoning behind things. The word excuses is often something that's thrown in by people with an agenda that can't actually come up with a good reason as to why we've been doing quite well over the last 10 games, and then we've lost this game, and then the instant reaction is to just batter Arteta or batter the side or batter whatever. And this is coming from someone that's in a position where I'm on the fence about Arteta. I'm not Arteta out. I'm not Arteta in. I'm very much still just waiting and seeing what's happening. And off the back of this one game, I'm not going to lose my head. Like I've seen a lot of people lose their heads quite embarrassingly, to be honest. Yeah, it doesn't seem, Hambo, that way. That Laka can't seemingly last beyond 60 minutes. And that's another reason why we don't need to offer him a new contract. So we need to be smart about this. We need to be bringing players in that are going to improve it. Xanthsith says, we made it too easy for Liverpool. The atmosphere got to the young players, and I believe it will be a learning point for them. We did manage to beat their press a few times. Consistency is key. Yeah, there were some really good clips, actually, that went around about Arsenal building up from the back. You probably saw them across your social feeds, playing through the Liverpool press. I've never seen Arsenal do that for a long, long time, been able to really play through the press. But a few times we lost it. And that's going to happen against Liverpool because they're a very, very good side. But it's in those moments where defensively you've got to be on it. And unfortunately, we weren't towards the end of the game. And that was kind of that was the issue, is that we weren't really on it for the whole match. The concentration was lost after we conceded that first goal. And that is certainly a for me, it's an indication that this side is still very young and that needs to improve, and that they need to improve kind of their mental state regarding games when they do go a goal behind or when things start to unravel and aren't going well. They lost their heads entirely. And even Arteta lost his head on the touchline, which I know in the moment I really enjoyed, but I was speaking to Bailey, my colleague at the Arsenal way, and he was talking about how it kind of, that was at the point where things did start going wrong, and maybe it wasn't the best, it wasn't the best situation for us, really. Oh, dearie me. It's starting to go now. The voice was starting to go there. We've got it. We brought it back, but I won't be on for too much longer. I can feel it going. And I've got to do another show at 9:30, so I need to preserve it. Running with Skizzer says, these boys are getting better with every outing as a unit. This will galvanise them, I think. Matt M says, I thought Ben White was particularly poor. Made it too easy for Jota for his goal and completely lost confidence on the ball after a failed dribble on 5 minutes. I expect better from him. You know, it's it's probably his worst game for the last, 6 or 7 that he's had. I can probably forgive that one. It's now about how he reacts in the game against Newcastle. Griefhampton says the main difference is senior players, Liverpool play at the highest level. Youngsters can just focus on doing their thing. The only comparable Arsenal player yesterday may be Partey, who wasn't 100%. I'm just going to have a look at the Liverpool side. Played that game, and kind of just the age difference between those players is a big one. You look at Alisson, 29. Trent, obviously, is one of their younger players, but even he still just 23, who is ironically older than quite a few of our defenders in that team. Virgil van Dijk is 30. Joel Matip, 30. Shimikas, 25. Fabinho, 28. He's 28, really. I thought he was younger than that. Thiago, 30. Oxlade-Chamberlain, 28. Mane, 29. Salah, 29. And Diogo Jota is 24. Their average age must have been about 27, maybe even 28 that game. And I think that the difference between the average age of the two teams was certainly a big showing. And it really did show the difference in experience, the difference in quality. And just in those difficult moments, Liverpool just were able to outshine Arsenal, kept their heads, and were ruthless at the end, which is what counted. Now, thankfully, we're going to wrap things up there because, as you can probably hear, my voice is gone. It's going. And I've got another show to do at 9:30, which hopefully my voice will be recovered by. So we will wrap things up there. I'm going to do another show, hopefully this evening / afternoon with some of the guys, the regulars in the podcast around 5 o'clock. And then I'll be on the Arsenal Lounge this afternoon or this evening at 8 p.m. UK time. But other than that, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to all of you. I'm going to wrap things up quickly because it's going to go. I can feel it. Drop a like, subscribe, and as always, up the Arsenal.